Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Erik and Erik Tiger Football Talk. We're just two Clemson grads who love nothing more than talk a little more about Tiger football. I'm Derek. We got a big game coming up this weekend on Saturday against Florida State. Erik, can you give us a little bit of information about the game first?
Yeah, Clemson 7-1, coming off a bye week, still ranked top 4 in the nation, going against Florida State. 2-6, struggling a little bit this year, but it's at Tallahassee. It's on ABC at noon. Over under 65 on this game. Clemson's currently favored by 35 points, which means the experts are thinking it's going to be like a 50-15 kind of game, which is just crazy to me because this game used to be the marquee matchup of the ACC every year. The winner of this contest has gone on to win the ACC every year since 2011. And in 2013, FSU won the college football championships. So it's kind of interesting to me that the spreads have been this way, and the past few years, Florida State's program has just gone downhill.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've gotten so used to the narrative of Clemson carrying the banner for the ACC, and it really did not used to be like that. It used to be Florida State carrying it for a little bit, and then Clemson coming in and having these great epic battles and college game day matchups. You mentioned it, 2013 they won the national championship. 2014, Jameis Winston comes back as the quarterback, and they get to the college football playoff and lose to Oregon. And then the cracks in the program started to show, and 2015, 2016 had some down years, and Jimbo Fisher leaves. They bring in Willie Taggart. And let's be honest, this is well known within the college football world. They had and continue to have massive culture problems. They did not give Willie Taggart long enough to figure it out. He did not produce enough wins to maybe justify him sticking around. So they had to buy him out after already buying out his contract from Oregon, who bought out his contract from USF. So they buy him out. He goes to FAU. They go out and get Mike Norvell from Memphis. So this is not exactly a college football team that has a lot of money to begin with, and now we have coronavirus. Like, they spent a lot of money on coaches that are no longer there, and they are banking on Mike Norvell to be the man for the job, and in the future to reduce these point spreads to less than 35 points, I would assume.
I think it's so crazy that they went out, and they headhunted and seeked out Willie Taggart to steal from Oregon to lead this program. He had ties to Florida. They felt like this was going to be a perfect fit. And he goes 4-5 in his second year, and they terminate him because they were just expecting this massive turnaround. And like you said, I think this culture issue at Florida State has been going on for a while now. Even since back in the Jimbo Fisher days. So for Florida State AD to not give Willie Taggart enough time to fix this program. Most new coaches are given a minimum of 4 years, 3-4 years, just to get their own recruits in the door. Willie was still playing with Jimbo Fisher's kids. So they buy him out for $20 million, by the way, and they go out and get Mike Norvell, who was 12-1 last year at Memphis. It seems to be a great hire, was 38-15 overall, but Memphis was his first head coaching job. So here he is, kind of a newest coach, becoming the head coach of FSU with the same culture problems and the same problem of not being able to recruit your own players. And he started out 2-6 this year. It looks like it's going to be one of Florida State's worst years on record.
Yeah, and listen, you're in a difficult position. Last year, I do not believe they should have fired Willie Taggart. They were basically looking at the recruiting rankings and being like, well, if we don't fire him now, we're going to fire him in the middle of heavy recruiting. Let's do it earlier in the year. It was like November, I think they fired him in order to bring in a new coach. And listen, the more often you turn over these coaches, especially in college football, the less authority the next one has, because no one's going to believe it. There's still players on this team that were brought in by Jimbo Fisher. Now they're on their third head coach. I'm guessing it makes it a little bit more difficult for Mike Norvell to come in and preach anything at all, because they're just like, whatever, you're not even going to be around in a year or two. The cracks in the program, I'm against Jameis Winston. I've always been against him. What he did, some of the off the field issues he had at Florida State were really bad. I think his toxicity really ruined the locker room. I'm sure it's never just one guy. There was an ESPN article that came out that actually was a fantastic read. It chronicled all the issues that Florida State's had over the last few years, from administration with ADs and then boosters and fundraising and Jimbo Fisher and his frustrations. And it doesn't paint anyone as the villain. It paints it as, hey, there was this, there's failings just at every level, from maybe the players that they were bringing in, the coaching and the sort of coaching that they were getting, but also like the academic support. Florida State has been on the bottom of that academic report seemingly for the last decade. They have not been able to make progress there. This is one of those programs. I hate seeing Florida State at the bottom of the ACC rankings, but they're there. They're tied with Syracuse. They're 1-6 in conference play. And if you look at them in the last few years, I don't know exactly how, if I were to say a betting man, like, are they much better next year? I don't know how you can really say that. It's almost regardless of recruiting rankings or anything like that. Like, this needs to be fixed in-house. They're not going to bring in one person. And to be fair, they did have Sam Howell, the stellar quarterback from UNC. He was supposed to be on this team, and he flipped to UNC. But this is not a one-player fix, not a one-coach fix. This is a massive problem.
Yeah, and it's a really bad time to be having to try to overhaul and fix this entire program during COVID, during a shortened season, during no preseason, barely any spring practice. I mean, because FSU's dealing with the same thing that all these other programs are dealing with. They have tons of injuries. They have, bad O-lines because of not enough coaching. They have players that are opting out that aren't even playing this season. I mean, Teramon Terry just opted out, which is one of their top, if not their top wide receiver. And we talk about injuries. I mean, their quarterbacks, Blackman, entered the transfer portal. Then their backup, who they were actually doing some decent work with, Jordan Travis, because he was able to scramble and make some things happen with his legs. He gets injured 2 weeks ago, has to sit out the second half of that game and the game last week. So finally, they get their true freshman, Chubba Purdy, comes in, does a great job, and he injures his collarbone and undergoes season-ending surgery. I mean, talk about a program that's beat up, and now they need to figure out how to pick up all these pieces and move forward. And like you said, I think it's going to be a multi-year fix, and I really hope that FSU sticks with Mike Norvell and lets him try to fix this program, because it's going to take multiple recruiting classes to fix it.
I mean, they had opt-outs before the year began, which Clemson has avoided for the most part. Again, culture differences. I don't blame anyone who wants to opt out for personal medical reasons or for career aspirations. I'm just saying, as a whole, Clemson did not have players opt out. Florida State had a ton. Marvin Wilson, their first round defensive tackle lineman, I think he hurt his knee, I want to say, a week or two ago. So he's out. He's out the remainder of the year. And they just had a defensive tackle opt out this year. He's not even opting out. He's not saying he's transferring. He's not saying he's going to the NFL draft. He's just opting out. So it started off when Mike Norvell came in. Do you remember the story about him coming in and saying that he had the race riots were going on at that point in time, and he said that he reached out to each player individually, and Marvin Wilson, the first round talent, was the one who called him out publicly on social media, being like, that did not happen. So his tenure got off to a rocky start. Coronavirus happens. He loses players to opt-outs. He's lost quarterbacks to injury. The one place you can't have it. I don't know how you can have a worse season than what Florida State is having right now for having a decently talented team.
Yeah, I mean, the one good thing is they did get back their leading tackler in Hamza Nasruddin last week. He had over 100 tackles last year before getting, I think it was an ankle injury that ended his season. So they did get him back last week. It's going to be a tough ride for them, and Mike Norvell has a lot on his hands to try to fix that program. On the Clemson side of things, good news is that Trevor Lawrence is back at the helm. Sounds like he's good to go, and he's ready to kind of get back out there. I saw a tweet that he's more perspective now that he had to sit out for those 2 weeks, which would make me scared if I was playing against him. I feel like he's going to come out and try to make up for that lost time. I feel like Dabo's going to try to bench him in the second half, and he's going to be like, no, sir, I'm playing this game. Unfortunately, though, Frank Ladson and James Skalski have been ruled out. Ladson hurt his foot after 6 snaps at Notre Dame. No timeline on his return. Skalski still dealing with that groin injury. Still trending to come back towards the end of the season. Hoping to have him back by the ACC championship game. And elsewhere, it seems like all the remaining injuries from that Notre Dame game, that week off has really helped, and all of them are trending in the right direction to be able to start this weekend.
Yeah, the amount of questionables we had on the injury report, I mean, I think it was like 12 or something like that. there's a lot of players who are going to be carrying injuries into this week. I don't know if Dabo will just have an abundance of caution, just sit them. But we said that kind of, I think against Boston College, there were some injuries. We're like, maybe they're just sitting them, and then they'll play against Notre Dame, and then they end up not playing. So again, some lingering issues. That's something we talked about for Clemson for the entire year. We're also talked about with Florida State as well. So there's going to be a lot of players who aren't out there. But again, Clemson is less banged up than they were against Notre Dame. I did want to talk about the depth of both these teams for a second. It's not necessarily injury related, but I want to talk about recruiting because for Clemson specifically, most of the games are won before they even show up because the recruiting is just so much better than the rest of the ACC. So I wanted to compare Florida State's recruiting versus Clemson's recruiting for the last 4 years. So dating back from 2017 to 2020, there's been 4 recruiting cycles. Florida State, of those 4 recruiting cycles, has averaged the 14th best recruiting class in the nation. They went from 6th to 11th to 18th to 22nd, which means they've gotten worse each year since 2017. It hasn't turned around yet. Clemson, in that same time, has averaged the 9th best recruiting class. Over the course of 4 years, those 5 spots are insignificant. Like that means that basically the last 4 years, when we've won 5 years in a row now, we've essentially had on the roster the same amount of talent. So it just kind of goes to the culture as far as who we're recruiting and then how we're coaching them, because these games on paper should be far more even.
Yeah, and when you talk about the domination that Clemson has had in the last 5 years over FSU, I mean, just in the last 2 meetings, Clemson has outscored FSU 104-24. And our last trip to Tallahassee 2 years ago, Clemson left with a 59-10 victory. So, I mean, Florida State leads the overall series 23-13, but it's definitely trending. One program's trending up and the other program is trending in the wrong direction. But like you said, talent-wise, it seems like on the field that they should be pretty evenly matched. I don't know if it's a culture thing or the injuries and the transfer portal and all that's going on. But it'll be interesting to see kind of moving forward how these programs continue to trend.
What did you say? The last 2 games was 100 and what?
104-24 in the last 2 meetings. That's
painful. Those are not good games. Those are games that are over with by the end of the first quarter. And the offensive line of Florida State has been kind of a laughing stock, kind of the butt of the jokes for the last 5 years, really across college football. I think even the average college football fan knows, like, if you say Florida State offensive line, they're like, oh, that's the worst in the entire country. And traditionally, if you would say, what is Clemson's strength, it really is our defensive line. I don't think this year is much different. As long as we are able to have full go, we have KJ Henry, we have Miles Murphy, the freshman lineup, we have Brian Brzee. We have a lot of playmakers on that defensive line, and then that offensive line, I don't think has gotten much better, not to my knowledge. So that automatically a mismatch on, I don't know if you want to say their second string quarterback, their third string quarterback, whoever is able to play this week. Yeah, exactly. So whoever drew the shortest straw. So I think that's just going to be a guy who'll be running for his life for most of the game. I don't expect a clean game from Florida State because they haven't played clean the entire year. Somehow their only win on the year was against UNC, which was number 5 at the time. They almost got a win against Georgia Tech. They lost 16-13 at home to open the year. That's the same Georgia Tech team. We won 73-10, I think.
Yep. Not
a good omen for Florida State on what's to come this weekend.
No. And like I said earlier, I mean, the spread is over under 65. The spread is 35. I mean, what are you thinking about this game? What do you think it's going to come down to?
I looked up before the game that the worst loss in the series history was 57-0 Florida State over Clemson in 1993. I think that'll be eclipsed in this game. I've been notoriously cautious on some of my predictions for the last few weeks, even dating back to Miami. I thought the Miami game was going to be good. I didn't think Clemson was necessarily clicking on all cylinders. They've had some issues running the ball. But if you look at this Florida State team, I just don't know where you look and you're intimidated by a matchup. I don't know if you look over on the other sideline, if you're like, I think the opposing coach has an answer for what we have. I think they're so far below Boston College. I mean, Boston College looked like a good team. I mean, next year I expect Boston College to be a great team. I'm just not intimidated by anything they have to do. So I think the implied point or the implied score was going to be 50-15.
Yep.
I think this is a 63 to 12 sort of game. So I think we go over on that. I think Clemson made the over under 65. Clemson may score the 65 points all by themselves.
Yeah.
Florida State might get a couple field goals. Maybe they'll get a long touchdown or something like that with like our third strings in. But I think we cover the spread. I think we go over. I think Trevor Lawrence is pulled at some point in time, maybe second quarter, third quarter. There might be some rust, but those are my thoughts. What are you thinking for this game?
I think Florida State's in trouble. I think they drew the short straw, and I think they have probably the worst week to face Clemson. Clemson's coming off a loss and coming off a bye, and
right.
Trevor Lawrence is coming back from a 2-week absence. I would not want to suit up for that game if I was Florida State. I mean, the Tigers right now have 6 different players who have caught multiple touchdown passes this season so far. And that's with Trevor, that's with DJ, that's with Tyson. It doesn't matter who's out there. Clemson's scoring. And Florida State, I don't think, has the answer. I am going to agree with your prediction, and I believe it's going to be a 63-10 game. And I think that those 10 points come in garbage time. I think Brent has something to say about what's going on with his defense. I think this is his time to kind of put the mark down and put the hammer down. I think Clemson is refocused after this loss. I think we've recovered from injuries and from COVID. I expect this to be a statement game by Clemson and their coaches to kind of make sure with the playoff committee meeting next week that this is a game that, hey, we're still here and we're still here to compete and we're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And, Clemson has had the problem running the ball. They've had a bye week to reevaluate how they want to proceed the rest of the year. I expect to have a good game on the ground because, one, if we don't have a good game on the ground this week, we never will. I mean, coming out of a bye, that's the time to re-examine, implement a new strategy over the course of 2 weeks. We're not banged up on the offensive line. We still have Travis Etienne, and they're down not only Marvin Wilson, the first-round draft pick, but also now, I don't remember the other guy's name, but another defensive tackle opting out. We should be able to run the ball in this game. And with a loss this week, this will be the third straight year that Florida State will have 7 losses in a year. Now that is an incredible number. We've had 7 losses in the last 5 years, including postseason. So just not a really good start. And one thing I do want to talk about, we've talked a lot about things about Florida State. The quarterback who will be starting this game, Jordan Travis, he did provide a spark for them midway through the season. He did not start the year. He led the comeback against Jacksonville State. Again, I understand how that sounds, that they had to come back against Jacksonville State. He did provide a spark. He has a really nice deep ball. And I don't want to say he's one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC, but he's a serviceable quarterback, and he can get the job done. The problem is, unlike a lot of other teams in this conference, I don't think he has the weapons on the outside. I don't think he has a running back help, and I don't think he has an offensive line. So I don't know who he's supposed to throw to, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be overly surprised if he makes a couple really nice throws in this game, because I think in the future he might be a really good quarterback. He just doesn't have the talent around him at the time being.
No, I agree completely. And in other news, this won't be a Clemson show if we don't announce or re-announce that Will Muschamp has been fired for the Gamecocks. Not really surprising. I never really liked Will Muschamp to begin with. I didn't feel like it was a great fit for either of those programs to kind of take them to the next level. I do love all the media talking about who's going to be the next coach and how everyone's always trying to steal the Clemson coordinators with Brent and with Tony Elliott, and I keep just laughing it off because I don't think that'll ever happen.
No. Will Muschamp, talk about someone who's had a tumultuous time. He was the coach in waiting under Mac Brown at Texas 10 years ago, goes to Florida, doesn't have a great time, is able to get a redemption bid here, but I'm guessing he'll just go be a defensive coordinator somewhere making $1 million a year, and that might be good enough. I've enjoyed his stay because he's never beaten Clemson, so it was nice. It was nice having him around, but similar to how I talk about parodying the ACC, I don't ever want to lose, but in order to have the best rivalries in college football, you need to have South Carolina competing against Clemson and being good. So overall, in the best interest of Clemson and their rivalry with South Carolina, I hope they do find the right coach who's able to motivate that team, motivate that program, and turn around and still lose to us most of the time.
Yeah, I am sad. I mean, our typical rivalry game is supposed to be next week, and it's not happening, which is it's a little bit depressing. But we'll get through it, and like you said, hopefully they hire a coach that kind of can bring that program back up and make the games a little bit more competitive moving forward. But hey, thanks everyone for listening. If you like our content, help us out, subscribe so you can always get our next video and all of our input. Like our video, and we'll be coming at you after the game on Saturday, and look for a video on Sunday on the post-game breakdown.
Yeah, we're also on Instagram. One more thing to add there, and then get the popcorn ready. It's a 12 o'clock game, so it's early, guys, ABC. But go Tigers. We'll see you all on Sunday.
Go Tigers.